Now, the Minister for Agriculture has described the FAI's decision to question government on the use of public money for horse and greyhound racing as a divisive approach. It comes with the government facing calls for an independent review of the funding it gives racing annually. Our reporter Barry Lenihan has more. What's this all about, Barry?
It's all about the Horse and Greyhound Fund set up in 2001, and since then both industries have received close to a combined €1.5 billion in state funding. 494 million came from general taxation and the rest from the betting levy, which is generated for business on all sports and everything else. The levy is currently almost exclusively ring-fenced for racing. Now, last year €91 million went to the fund, with €73 million going to Horse Racing Ireland. But now the FAI is raising questions. It has commissioned an economic review of the money given to racing, and that review concluded how the horse and greyhound industries were benefiting from, quote, an unusual funding mechanism that was out of line with general government policy. The review stated soccer and other sports should garner greater revenue from betting tax, with football or soccer now accounting for up to 50% of all bets placed in the country, according to some estimates. And Daniel McDonnell of the Irish Independent caught sight of the FAI review, and he's been bringing me up to speed.
The idea of ring-fencing tax from one activity and funneling it towards a related activity is actually quite unusual in Ireland generally. I mean, you could analyse the purpose and the value of the fund overall and how it operates as a use of public funds. But the contention would be that if income from betting tax is to be channelled back towards governing bodies of sporting organisations, then it should be shared around. But the second point as well, they're also asking why across the 20 years there has been no real value for money assessment offered under the criteria of public funding, and also asking why this income that is going towards horse racing and greyhound racing, just the checks and balances there for how it's being used. As in, for example, in the horse racing world, a lot of it has been used for prize money. I think it questions the merits of this, and when you consider maybe the criteria that exist for the use of public funds maybe in spending in other areas.
What solutions are put forward in this report?
This is the thing. I mean, there's three solutions recommended. One is just quite simply at the current rate, to spread around the betting tax income proportionately. A second would be to raise the betting tax from 2% to 3%, and that extra 1% would be divided amongst other sports. And the third is effectively the same solution, to raise it to 3%, but guarantee horse racing and greyhound racing that they would retain funding at 2021 levels. The question of what happens next is probably the interesting one, because the appetite for the political world to really get involved in this, it would appear to be minimal.
And that's Daniel McDonnell of the Irish Independent there. Barry, how exactly is the money to horse racing in particular distributed?
More than €42 million in public funds paid out in prize money at horse races last year. This the source of debate, given some of the top owners, some very wealthy beneficiaries, the head of Ryanair, for instance, Michael O'Leary, the tycoon John Magner. Now, those in the industry argue prize money a vital stimulus, and that for every euro as well invested by the state generates €30 in economic activity in return in racing. However, the FAI report has queried the economic figures quoted in the past by the horse racing industry, and Labour TD Eoin O'Riordan wants an independent review.
Well, I've been raising this for about 10 years. The Horse and Greyhound Fund has been something that I've had a difficulty with for all that time. It goes back to 2001, and I don't think too many people in Ireland are aware that the levy placed on betting in Ireland, all of it goes into one fund, which is about 100 million a year. And over the last 20 years, that's equated to about 1.5 billion, which means that this industry is being very well supported. However, the vast bulk of this money actually goes to prize money. So it's not to infrastructure, it's not to anything else, it's to prize money. Now, I think what this shows is that when the state makes a value judgment as to the importance of a sport, it can really make things happen. I'm a football fan. I do a lot of work with the FAI and with grassroots football, and I see dilapidated stadia around the country. I see underinvestment. I see a women's team going to a World Cup where some of the players are still playing here in Ireland, who play in facilities that are quite frankly pathetic week in, week out.
I'm not disputing the picture you've painted there in relation to football facilities across Ireland, but at the same time, horse racing in particular is an industry and supports directly and indirectly 29,000 jobs, we're told.
Well, we were told that, but the report, as commissioned by the FAI, questions a lot of those figures. But I would say if you gave any industry or any sport 1.5 billion over 20 years, they'd probably have the same results. I think there's an issue of fairness here. I think there's an issue of political will. I think that is justifiably, there's a call for it to be reviewed. Now, I called in the Dáil yesterday on the Taoiseach purely to review the Horse and Greyhound Fund and how it is financed. I was rebuffed. They won't even countenance our review. It is fair enough, however, I think, for politicians to question as to how 1.5 billion can be spent exclusively from the receipts of one levy to benefit horse and greyhound racing, and disproportionately this money is spent on prize money, which is won by particularly wealthy individuals, as opposed to other codes, other sports, other pursuits that would also benefit from that type of funding.
The argument, whilst it is won on the surface by wealthy individuals, is that it takes a village to raise a horse, and that money trickles down to everyone involved in the upkeep of an animal.
It takes a village to raise a football team. It takes a village to raise a footballer. The joy that football or other sports or codes bring to the country is immeasurable.
That's the view of the opposition. What of the view of government? Here's Agriculture Minister Charlie McConalogue.
I think it's a divisive approach that's been taken by the FAI. We, as a government, are rightly massively committed to sports right across the country and to developing that. And alongside that, there's a really important partnership in terms of the horse racing and greyhound industries. So the horse racing industry, for example, is responsible for 30,000 jobs in our economy. And we are truly a world-leading country when it comes to horse racing. That hasn't happened by accident. It has happened because of the strategic partnership between the horse racing industry and the government over many years.
Some of your parliamentary colleagues in the Dáil are raising questions, though. They argue that the government is giving, in the case of horse racing, €70 million a year to an already very wealthy industry, and yet at the same time the facilities in football, for instance, leave a lot to be desired.
The €72 million that's allocated this year, for example, to the horse racing industry, that 72 million compares to the 166 million, for example, that we've invested in sport, which was a record number, because we do very much recognise the massive role the sports plays as well. We shouldn't be pitting one against the other. Every sport, 25 million to soccer particularly. And that reflects the fact that the government massively values the role that sports clubs across the country, including soccer clubs, play. And we shouldn't be pitting one against the other. We should be doing both. We have a horse racing industry which is responsible for 30,000 jobs and which punches massively above its weight on the world stage.
If something is world leading, does it really need such a subvention from the Exchequer?
When you look at the horse racing industry nationally and you look at those countries that we are competing with, they all have similar levels of investment. In many cases, much more levels of investment from government in those sectors.
The tenor or the ultimate conclusion of this FAI commissioned report is that betting revenue, 50 to 60% of it is now derived from bets placed on soccer in this country, and effectively the FAI report argues that the soccer and other sports are now subsidising racing. Is that not a fair point? Should more betting tax not be put towards those other sports?
The betting tax isn't ring-fenced for any one particular sector. It goes into the national coffers. The horse racing industry plays a massive role in terms of our economy, and we get really strong value for money in that. As I say, almost €2 billion worth of economic activity to our economy, and it results in 30,000 jobs.
30,000 figure has been quoted a few times. It does come from a report by Deloitte commissioned by Horse Racing Ireland in 2017, and there are calls for an independent value for money assessment of the funds put in towards the Horse and Greyhound Fund over the past few years. Are you willing to look at those calls for an independent value for money assessment of this fund?
I'd welcome any further assessments, absolutely, because I've travelled the country and I've seen firsthand the employment that we have through the horse racing industry.
So for example, an independent assessment, you're happy to see that happen?
For example, two key figures, Barry. We're the second largest producer of bloodstock in the world by value sold, and also we're the third highest, we as a country produce the third highest number of thoroughbreds foaled each year, just behind the USA and Australia.
An independent assessment, are you willing to commit to that? That is what some of the opposition want.
Those, for example, are independent figures. Those stack up.
And that was Charlie McConalogue. There's finally a statement from the HRI, Barry.
Yeah, the FAI report with the Department of Sport, Horse Racing Ireland, saying this evening how the racing and breeding industry provides a strong economic return every year for government support, as well as providing entertainment and continued international success. And this industry supports thousands of jobs in mostly rural communities all over Ireland.
Barry Lenihan, thank you very much indeed.